Welcome back to the Nerd National Communication Center. It's Friday, July 24th, 2020, and this is the Nerd News. Headlines in this week's Nerd News: Twitter got hacked, Nvidia's thinking about buying ARM, and the founder of the Linux operating system tells Intel how he really feels. So let's take a look. First up, I've got an article over at the motherboard, vice.com. Hackers took control of some really big name accounts at Twitter. And this was either an inside job or social engineering. Anyway, they got hold of an internal tool that allows you to take control of a Twitter account as if it's yours. And there's certainly a need for that. But some of the players who got hacked in this, their accounts, Elon Musk, Joe Biden, Bill Gates, Barack Obama, Uber, Apple, and they started tweeting cryptocurrency scams, trying to get people to go in and click on these links to make money off these people. So it was all just a big scam, which these things always are, but it's a big deal to have such a name company, such a big frontline company get hacked like this in this embarrassing way. So you can read the whole article over at vice.com. Next up, an article came up at Engadget talking about Wells Fargo wanting its employees to delete TikTok from company phones. I talked about TikTok in my last Nerd News and recommended that you do not have it on your device because, among other things, it's just not a good thing to have. You can look at my video from 2 weeks ago, but Wells Fargo is trying to get its employees to get rid of it from their phones. Federal government's still thinking about banning it in the United States. So there's a quote down here. Here, let me select this and read this to you. We have identified a small number of Wells Fargo employees with corporate-owned devices who have installed TikTok application on their device. Due to concerns about TikTok's privacy and security controls and practices, and because corporate-owned devices should be used for company business only, we have directed those employees to remove the app from their device. So the TikTok saga continues. So you can check this out at Engadget. Speaking of hacking, this one affected me. There's an article over at ZDNet. Garmin services got attacked with an encryption ransomware attack, and they have brought their website down and they have brought their fitness app down. I've seen this message. I saw this message on my iPhone yesterday when I was trying to sync my exercise, my steps to my device, and I checked it this morning and they're still down. So evidently they have good backups and they're reloading their backups, so they're not going to be paying, hopefully not paying these encryption hackers. The idea of this is they encrypt all your files on your system once they've hacked in and send you a message saying, pay us this much money and we'll give you the de-encryption key so you can get your data back. So hopefully Garmin did the second commandment in IT, thou shalt back up thy data. A couple weeks ago, I was not giving Samsung much love, and it looks like I'm going to have to continue that. Over at Hackaday, there's an article that finally explains why a whole bunch of Samsung Blu-ray players were bricked. They were repeatedly rebooting, and I'll let you read the article, but it gets pretty geeky. It was basically saying that a badly formatted XML file was being read at boot up even before the OS would check for update to download an update. So then it would crash and reboot. And Samsung is doing the only thing they can do, which is saying, if you mail your Blu-ray player into us, we will fix it. And then Samsung's evidently got some tools where they can go into the file system on the Blu-ray and delete that XML file so the thing will boot up and then they can update the operating system on it. But just another black eye for Samsung. So continuing my theme of malware and hacking, this is state-sanctioned malware and hacking. China mandates that every company have this golden tax invoicing software on their computers so they can submit their, I guess, their sales tax and their tax receipts and all that stuff to the Chinese national government. And they have put a piece of spyware malware in it called Golden Helper that hunts through their system and basically spies on what they're doing. Now, you're mandated in China. You have to use this. This is from the government. If you don't do it, you're in big trouble. So Ars Technica has the lowdown on this, and you can read the whole article over there, but you know, I certainly hope free countries are not doing this type of stuff. Over at Tech Report, there's an article, and I found this on several other tech websites, where Nvidia is reportedly interested in buying the CPU designer ARM. So ARM CPUs are the single most popular CPU in the world. It is in every iPhone, every iPad, probably every smartwatch, every Android phone. They're all using the ARM processors, and the way ARM works is they license the technology, they don't make the chips. So Apple, for instance, is changing their Macintoshes to use ARM processors. They're calling it Apple Silicon because Apple highly customizes the ARM design. But ARM scales very well. The amount of processing power you get per watt is vastly superior to Intel and AMD's processors on the PC side. So SoftBank, a Japanese investment company, bought ARM and they're now looking at putting it on the auction block. They bought it in 2016 for $32 billion. Apple evidently is not interested in this. I don't think it would have passed antitrust concerns had Apple bought ARM. That's my opinion. But if Nvidia does this, then they would be catapulting themselves into basically the top 3 CPU designers in the world: Intel, AMD, Nvidia. And Nvidia's valuation is actually, I read an article last week where Nvidia's capitalization actually surpassed Intel. Now, it was probably just briefly, but Intel has been stumbling. They've been having trouble rolling out smaller lithography. In other words, we're shrinking all the transistors, resistors, electronic components on a CPU chip smaller and smaller so you can get more on one chip. So this could turn out to be a very big deal. If you looked at Nvidia's financials and their profits and their debt ratios, they might be a good company to invest in. Now, I am not giving you investing advice, and you would be crazy. But you might ask your financial advisors to look into Nvidia, because if they do end up buying ARM, I think they could be a very strong company. Just a little follow-up on my video from last Friday, programming death marches and the story of EA Spouse. This article over at Digital Trends talks about how video game companies have responded when they've been accused of crunch time. And crunch time in death marches is working your employees extremely long hours. And I argue that it's very counterproductive, because once you've been working 60 plus hours, 3 or 4 more weeks, you're actually less productive than if they just let you go back to normal work. But you can see in this article here, Rockstar Games, BioWare, Treyarch, Epic Games, Telltale, NetherRealm, CD Projekt Red. This just goes on all through the gaming industry. And if you have a supply of artists, animators, and programmers that exceeds the demand, that just begs for abuse of those employees because you know you can replace them. So check out my Programming Death March video if you want more information on this. Next article is over at PC Gamer, where the founder of Linux basically spouted off on Intel and told them to stop inventing magic instructions and start fixing real problems. As you know, the Intel CPUs have had a series of very serious security flaws where the programming stack and a bunch of other tricky stuff can be used to do arbitrary code execution, in other words, to run malware. Now, Linus Torvalds, now I have to take a second here because pronouncing his name is an interesting endeavor in of itself. So I jumped over to how to pronounce, and his first name is evidently pronounced
Linus.
And his last name is evidently pronounced
Torvalds.
Well, this is how he says it.
Linus Torvalds. Linus Torvalds.
Well, I don't think I'm going to get it that good, but Linus Torvalds was the founder of the Linux operating system, which is the free operating system. And I love this quote. Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, offered up some interesting thoughts on Intel's advanced Vector Execution 512, AVX-512 instruction set, calling it a power virus that was only created to make the company's CPU hardware perform well in benchmarks. He also admitted being biased and grumpy in his assessment. Well, hopefully he didn't use profanity because he's pretty renowned for being very profane in his emails as he responds back to developers, but he took some time off and promised to do better. I like this. I hope the AVX-512 dies a painful death and that Intel starts fixing real problems instead of trying to create magic instructions to then create benchmarks that they can look good on. I hope Intel gets back to basics, get their processors working again, and concentrate on more regular code that isn't HPC or some other pointless special case. Tell me how you really feel, Linus. Linux.
Linus. Linus.
Linus Torvalds.
Torvalds.
Tell me how you really feel. The next article I want to touch on is something I thought that could have been done a long time ago and would hope would catch fire. If you think about your smartphone, it's got tons of power. It's probably at least a quad-core processor. It certainly can surf the web. It could do word processing, spreadsheet, email. It can do all that stuff. The problem is input. You can't do heavy-duty input with a touch screen. And screen size. You can't do a lot of work because the screen is just too small. So what I've always thought is if you were to take a phone and have an adapter that you could hook it up to a full-size screen, a mouse and a keyboard, you would be basically taking your PC with you. It's got plenty of power to do all your normal things, and sure, wouldn't it be nice to be able to take your environment home with you, have the exact same environment at home as you do at work or wherever you are? You can use it without the screen to do minor things, but when you want to do serious work, you hook it up to this little docking adapter, and you get a full 16:9 screen. Here they're just using a little tablet screen and a little small keyboard, but it could be a full-size keyboard. Linux and Android supports a mouse. iOS actually supports a mouse. I'm just surprised that this has not caught fire. So there's an article talking about this, using your smartphone with an external display and keyboard and mouse would make it so much better, and that's over at Tech Radar. So check it out. Moving on to my last tech article I want to speak about for this tech news is Mozilla has been working on a VPN. That's a virtual private network that you can use. So for instance, your ISP cannot spy on what domains you've been going to. In other words, what website you're going to. Now, once you go to the website, it's encrypted. They can't spy on that conversation, but they can basically see every website you've typed in because that first goes to a DNS server, which is your internet service provider's DNS server, which can log it and say this IP address wanted to look at this website. And maybe you don't want them to be able to do that. So if you set up a VPN, a virtual private network, everything leaving your device, your phone, your iPad, your PC is encrypted, and your ISP doesn't know where you're going. So Mozilla now has a VPN service that goes for $4.99 a month, and it's looking pretty good. And Mozilla has really been pushing the idea of privacy and security. Their web browser blocks a lot of tracking things, and this VPN service, it's not a third-party service. It should be, Mozilla should be an entity you could trust with VPN. So if you actually go to blog.mozilla.org, this is their official announcement of going public with this coming out of beta. Ars Technica also tested Mozilla's Wireguard-based VPN service, and they like it. They say it's fast. They do basically have a few concerns just because they're new to it, I guess you could say. And check it out. If you want more privacy and more protection, this may be the way to go. And don't forget, if you're using Firefox, I can come up here and click on this shield. I can get my protection dashboard, and you can see I was on my computer a lot Monday, and today I've already had 201 trackers blocked. I wasn't doing much web surfing at all on Tuesday, not very much Wednesday or Thursday, but I do like the tracking protection with Mozilla Firefox, and it is my web browser of choice now. I'm not using Chrome just because Google's business model is to know everywhere you're going so they know what advertising to serve up to you. And I can limit that some by not using Chrome. Besides, Chrome is kind of a resource hog. But that is the tech news for July 24th. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. Have a great weekend.